Let's get started. So welcome everyone to our keynote presentation for ASID New Jersey Student and Emerging Professionals Week. I am Jeffrey McCullough. I am chair of the Student Affairs Committee for ASID New Jersey and chair of ASID New Jersey Student and Emerging Professionals Week. I will later in the program introduce our other committee members who are here tonight, as well as board members who are here tonight. But first, before we get started with our program tonight, I'd like to turn it over to our chapter president. She is Nada Al-Zubi, and she is president of the board for ASID New Jersey. So take it away.
The webinar for something.
Could everyone please mute?
Oh, okay. Well, she's not open till Mondays.
Christina, can you mute people?
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nada.
All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Student Week keynote presentation by Royce Epstein, A&D Design Director at Mohawk Group. I'd like to thank you, Royce, for being here for our students tonight, and would like to thank our great also Student Affairs Chair, Jeffrey, and our Emerging Professional Chair, Carrie Newman. And they're a great, wonderful committee for putting this together. The whole Student Week was amazing, and we're waiting for tomorrow's whole day event. Looking forward. And I would also like to thank our chapter sponsors, Gold sponsor Design NJ, and our bronze sponsors, Atlas Marble and Granite, and JNS by Stark. Also would like to thank our Student Week sponsors, Benjamin Moore, Sherwin Williams, and Samuelson Furniture. Welcome, everyone, and back to you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Nada, and thank you for your leadership this week and throughout the year. So when we put together the program every year, we choosing a keynote is a really big part of that. And it's a committee effort, and we think about who might we ask that is going to bring something that we have not had before in a presentation. And we do have a committee of 6 people who work on planning this. And so I put that out to the committee, and I have want to give a special thanks to Gioia Giovanelli, who is our student rep to the board, because she made us aware of Royce Epstein. And it is because Gioia had met Royce at an ASID national event, and not just a state event, but a national event, and was so intrigued and also so impressed by how willing Royce seemed to be to want to connect with students and emerging professionals. And that is always such a wonderful sign when you see that in someone who has quite a storied career, as Royce has had. Royce is a 30-year veteran in the world of commercial interior design. She has extensive experience working in the A&D profession, both practicing in design firms and working in product development. She is currently the A&D Design Director for Mohawk Group, the world's largest carpet and flooring manufacturer. As design director, Royce shares her passion and vision for design, cultural trends, and the meaning of materials in a broad context, and feeds this insight to all of our industry's touch points as a strategic designer, trend forecaster, teacher, lecturer, critical thinker, and writer. Royce has a unique purview in the design industry through her art history background, always putting design in context, trying to find significance in cultural shifts and how they shape the language of design. Her specific interests are in social justice, sustainability, and using strategic design thinking for positive impact on communities and the environment. She has previously taught at Moore College of Art and Drexel University, and is currently a fellow for Jefferson University's Fashion and Textiles Futures Center, and an interior architecture advisory board member for Boston Architectural College. Royce is also active with ASID as an industry partner, having been on the National Outcome of Design Advisory Committee. Royce was named the 2015 Designer of the Year by Interiors and Sources magazine and received a HIP Award for Rising Star from Interior Design magazine in 2016. She lives in Philadelphia, where she is active in the design, art, and music scenes. She is a board member of Collab at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. So when I read that now, and when I read it when I first got it, it was one of those wow moments, because it is so fantastic that we now are able to present to you Royce Epstein. And we really wanted to connect with Royce to think about the power of design and design thinking. Those two topics are quite important as we reach our goal, which is to educate and empower the next generation of interior designers through the work that we do at ASID New Jersey. So Royce is going to start her presentation now. We do have a chat box monitor who's going to monitor chat box questions that we will then field to Royce. We want you to absolutely put questions in the chat box after as they come up, so that you don't forget them. And after Royce makes her formal presentation, then we're going to go into a question and answer period. If you don't get to put a question in the chat box, we'd love to have some questions live as well at that point. So Royce, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. You make me sound very tired and busy.
Busy for sure.
Busy for sure. Yeah, I'm definitely tired. Hey, everybody. It's really my pleasure to be here with you all tonight to present the keynote talk for the ASID New Jersey Student and Emerging Professionals Week. As Jeffrey mentioned, I'm Royce Epstein. I'm A&D Design Director at Mohawk Group. And I just want to start by saying I have really deep roots in New Jersey because it's where I grew up. I grew up in Monmouth and Mercer counties, and I spent the first 30 years of my life in New Jersey. And I also started my design career there. So tonight, in a brief way, I'm going to take you on a journey. Even though it's brief, hopefully it will be impactful about my own journey, and really through my eyes as an outsider in design. And I say that because I managed to forge a career path in the architecture and interior design profession without going to design school. I still went to college, but I didn't specifically study interior. So I want to share a few things with you as we go along. The first thing I'm going to share is this word on the screen. It's my personal mantra, and it's the word avanti. It's Italian, and it means forward. I didn't embrace this mantra until I had a major health crisis 8 years ago, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But it seemed to fit my new situation then, and I realized that all we can ever do is move forward one step at a time, especially when life is uncertain. And honestly, it's always uncertain. So it's certainly scary, as it was for me, and I really had to change my mindset from being a type A person who liked to be in control of things to becoming more patient and more present by living in the moment. And that's something you really have to practice. I realized that the idea of focusing on progress helped in 8 ways that have really benefited my career immensely. And I'm going to share those with you right now. So don't laugh, but that's me on the left in college. I went to Sarah Lawrence, and I was there in the late 80s. So I was looking all goth back then, listening to The Cure and New Order, and still the same, except my hair's not as big. I was born premature, actually, with one eye open. And I feel like this is really apropos because I do consider myself a futurist. I'm always wondering what's coming next in our world. But I am by training a historian and an art historian, to be precise. So I also care about the past, especially for putting things into context. And this is one duality that really defines me and extends into how I operate in the world and also at work. Another duality is that I'm pretty progressive, but I was also a late bloomer. In high school, I decided I wanted to become an art historian, and that's the path I was on until about 1991, when I dropped out of grad school because I was feeling homesick and bored and like a fish out of water. So I moved back home, which at the time was in Hightstown, right outside of Princeton, New Jersey. And my mom, who she's actually here tonight on the call listening. Hi, Mom. Everybody send my mom a hello in the chat. Anyway, when I dropped out of grad school and I moved back home, I was working in an art gallery. I was making quite literally no money. And in 1991, there was a recession. So not a lot of jobs to be had. And my mom found an ad in the local Princeton newspaper. It was called The Town Topics. And for those of you, you have to remember this is before the internet, which didn't happen until 1995 or so. And in there, in the Town Topics was an ad for an administrative assistant job at the office of Michael Graves. And I'm sure many of you know Michael because he practiced in New Jersey his entire career. I really think I got the job, not because any particular reason other than the man that I interviewed with, the principal who needed an assistant, was really into goth music and new wave music. And I knew every single band that he had CDs of in the studio. And I was immediately hired because I could tolerate his music. And honestly, that was how I got my job at Michael Graves. But after 3 months of working for him in his studio, I was quickly promoted into the interior design studio. And this was really the lucky break that changed the course of my life. I did spend 3 years at Michael's office, and for me, it was really my personal grad school. I learned a lot about design at all scales. I learned about the A&D profession. I learned how to operate within our industry. I did sneak into many architecture lectures at Princeton University. Security was a lot more lax back in the 90s. And I learned as much as I could so that I can really start to envision a new and different future than the art history one that I had previously thought about. And so I had to work really hard to hone my skills because, again, I didn't have that training in school. So during these years, again, there was still no internet. I remember when the fax machine got installed in the office, it was okay for samples to take 3 weeks to arrive. Everybody was drafting by hand. We didn't yet have AutoCAD. And I was the person who was meeting with all the sales reps. I managed our little closet of a library, but then I started to grow. I was allowed to select materials for projects and make presentation boards. And then I was allowed to write FF&E specifications and even help color drawings and make models that the entire studio were working on for design competitions. So the seeds for my new path were really planted at the office of Michael Graves. And again, my boss at the time in interior, she was one of my first mentors, told me that there is a role out there in larger design firms called a resource librarian, or sometimes they're known as a material specialist. And that really opened my mind to new possibilities. So after those 3 years in Michael's studio, I came across a really fantastic opportunity at a large design firm called Hillier, also in Princeton. Hillier, the big firm, was bought and dissolved, and Bob Hillier still has a smaller firm in Princeton, so you might be familiar with him. But back in the day, he had a very, very large firm. In the Princeton office alone, I think we had close to 500 people. And so I was able to work there for 10 years, which was fantastic. They were looking for a resource librarian, so that was my foot into the firm. And I got the job when I interviewed. And actually, I remember Hillier was very excited to get somebody from Michael Graves' studio. Now, when I resigned, Michael told me I would really hate it there because it was a very large commercial architecture firm. He thought his firm was very different, which I will tell you not so much. But the reality was that I was really excited to expand my knowledge and my skill set. So I did work again in Hillier for 10 years, and I worked in both the Princeton office and then I transferred to the Philadelphia office, and that's how I got to Philadelphia, where I live now. And I really immersed myself in all aspects of interior design. I not only functioned as the resource librarian by selecting and specifying materials as well and furniture while keeping the library up to date, but I also taught my colleagues about products. So I became billable. I was billed out to our clients as a designer because I was doing billable work. So quickly, although for me at the time, I remember it felt like forever, I rose in the ranks to become a project designer. I was very lucky to have mentors at Hillier who really supported me often when I had some challenges. And I'll talk about my challenges in a little bit. In Philadelphia, I also worked at Daroff Design, and then I worked at Kling Stubbins. Kling Stubbins was also purchased many years ago and is now part of a large engineering firm called Jacobs. At Kling, I was still managing the library, but I became a full-time senior designer. So I had a wonderful kinship with my colleagues, which was fantastic. I felt like I got into Harvard when I actually got the job at Kling because they were winning projects all over the Philadelphia area. It was really fantastic. At all three firms, I worked on projects of every single type. I learned deep firsthand knowledge of our industry, and I've made lifelong friends. I had amazing clients. I've also had some awful clients that really almost broke me. I think we all do. it took a really long time of working hard, and I had to work harder than other people because I'm not a trained designer. I had to learn on the job. I had a lot of obstacles to overcome. But as I can see looking back, I also brought something unique to the table because I had a different background. So the first way to move forward in your life and career, I think, is to really try to visualize a path. You might not stay on that path, or you might stray from the path, but it's okay for the path to not be linear. My path was certainly not linear. It can be fluid, and sometimes things don't make sense. Sometimes they don't connect or even resonate until decades later. And that was certainly the case for me. As I said, I was a late bloomer. After spending 21 years working at large A&D firms, I decided to change course and to go into product development. And I always like a good challenge. I'm really curious. And I was already designing a lot of custom products in my past role as material specialist. Plus, I was a material specialist for a long time. So I had that exposure to, how materials are made and how they come to market. So anyway, I was offered a job to move to New York City to work for a very well-known textile designer in our industry. And I decided to take it. And while I love my job at Clay and I was sad to leave, this was really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work on the other side. And when I say the other side, I mean the manufacturing side, learning how to design product and how it's made, and then how to market it back to our A&D industry. And my client was the furniture manufacturer Technion. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Technion. They were starting a new textile division which is now called Loom. So I worked then on all aspects of creating looms. So everything from trend research to design, color work, naming and romancing the product, all the marketing, and then also teaching the sales reps and the A&D community about the textiles. And after a few years of getting Loom up and running, I was ready now for even bigger challenges. So in 2015, I came to Mohawk Group as design director. I've been here just about 8 years. I think next month will be 8 years. And it's been a really wonderful adventure where I'm using all of my skills from my past experiences. So my job now entails major trend research in all aspects of culture to figure out how to apply that to product development. And every year I create something called our color and design vision. It becomes the direction for Mohawk's design teams to create new products. So I also develop color forecasts. I work on product strategies with our product development team and product management teams. And I am the face to the A&D community for Mohawk regarding design. I make sure that our brand messaging between product design, sustainability, and innovation are all aligned in the A&D market. So the moral here is that I found that my background actually in art history, which I thought would never be useful, was actually really helpful for trend forecasting and visioning new design projects. But it really wasn't until I got to Mohawk that I began to rely heavily on my academic education. So understanding historical context is important in this work because it allows me to look at what's happening in the world by using critical thinking to make sense of design. It became clear that this was my path all along. I just didn't know it, right? And it was unique to me in our industry. So the second way to move forward is to really practice your craft. And I think we can define practice in two ways. One way is to become proficient at something by doing it over and over. This involves immersing yourself so that whatever you're doing in design, you're learning and progressing by practice. I play guitar, and this is exactly how you get good at guitar, right? So this is especially important as you're beginning your career, as it takes many, many years to gain expertise through experience. So my advice is do not give up. It's very easy to give up and feel frustrated. You have to keep at it. Many interior designers know their skill sets well, and they lean on them to define their career. So for example, some designers love space planning, where they become maybe experts on a different facet of the industry. Maybe they're like a specialist in workplace design. So there are many paths in the design industry that once you know what you're enjoying and know what you enjoy to do, and then know that path to becoming proficient at it, you might want to hone your skills through that practice. The other type of practice is looking at what you're doing from a larger viewpoint. Like, are you spending your time doing things that will help you on your path? So for example, if you want to be a healthcare designer, is what you're doing now going to help you get there? Sometimes it's hard to know. So I recommend finding a good mentor who's already working in your desired field or segment, who can advise you and let you know if what you're doing and what you're learning will be valuable for your future role. And while there are no shortcuts for working hard and learning, it may not be necessary for you to only be space planning if you really want to be a project manager. So that's why it's good to sort of understand kind of the bigger picture. However, it's important for you too to have a solid set of skills that you don't get pigeonholed into doing one role. I have actually worked through 2 major recessions and some very big industry shifts where there were layoffs. I was never laid off, even though I was overhead, because I had a really diverse set of skills and I could support buildable projects in many different ways. So as you continue to practice design, try to imagine how you see yourself in the industry. You can still specialize, but it's important to have a diverse skill set. So the third way to move forward in your career is to work on projects, lots and lots of projects. I practiced interior design for 21 years, and I believe I've worked on hundreds and hundreds of projects. I tried to count and I gave up. It was just too many projects. And as I mentioned, I've worked in every single market segment. So don't shy away from rolling up your sleeves and being part of a project team. You should be watching and learning from more experienced designers. Watch how they create a vision for the project. Watch how they present to clients. Watch how they implement design thinking. Jeffrey mentioned design thinking earlier. And I guess now would be a good time to talk about design thinking. So this entails a process to engage your client while you're developing solutions for them. So the first step is really empathy, empathizing with the end user. The end user are the people that are living and working in your building. They may or may not be your client. Sometimes your client is like the CEO and maybe a smaller group of people that you're designing for, but you're really designing for the people in their organization who are using that space. So think about them. What do they need to feel welcome, to feel safe and productive? So the next step is to define their needs and then prioritize what you're going to do on your project to implement for them. The next step is called ideation. So this is really where the design part is really fun because you can use your creativity and think about some solutions, even out of the box ones for your client's project based on the research that you've done, the interviews you've done with your client and the end users, but then thinking about kind of the future. It's almost like speculative design. Think about what if we tried this or what if we did that. And after we do what we call prototype, which is when you create a few solutions and mock them up to test them with your client so they can imagine what will be successful. So design thinking is a really good practice because you are doing something we call co-designing with your client rather than just making assumptions what would be best for them. And this provides a better set of outcomes and tends to be more equitable for the end user. Additionally, you can learn about products and materials from your local sales reps. They are experts at the materials they're providing. I know it's easier to just go online today and look at products and Pinterest and whatnot, but trust me, meeting with reps in person is so valuable as you're learning from them. They are the experts on products, and you cannot get that from the internet. So I really owe my entire career to all the reps who called on me for decades and to the project designers that I collaborated with on all kinds of projects. And that's really how I cut my teeth in the industry and got experience, was just working on projects. So I have some extra advice for you here too. So no project is too big or too small. All clients and communities are important, and it's a great way to learn and be hands-on with smaller projects. You can learn valuable things either way, so don't discount any assignment that you get. There's always something to learn and always something to practice. So the fourth way to move forward in your career is to develop and then implement a process of working. This involves setting goals, applying work ethic, and collaborating on a team. Interior design is a team sport. There's no room for big egos or even small egos. There's no room for disorganization. In fact, both of them can really harm a project quite quickly. Much of my own design process entails implementing a vision with my team, collaborating with the team, listening, that's also part of empathy, listening to all parties, making decisions together, and executing that decision as best as you can, again, as a team. It's really important for the team to have consensus on how to move a project forward, and it's equally important that everybody understands why. Why are we doing this? And it should be clear at the end why we're doing it when everyone has been making decisions together. So I also find it important to use both sides of your brain. This is what's nice about design, because there's a technical side to our industry and there's a creative side to our industry. And design solutions really require both. So make sure you're nurturing both sets or both skill sets. Once you're working in the field a bit, you should be able to see what process works best for you to contribute to your team and produce great work for your clients. The next way to move forward in your career is to have patience. This was a very hard lesson for me to learn. By nature, I am really impatient. I'm that classic fast talking New Jersey, New York kind of gal who just wants to get things done quickly. But as we know, life does not always cooperate with what we want. And in our industry, there are many, many moments where we need to practice patience. Some architectural projects are actually years and years in the making. I've worked on some projects that were like 6 years and went on hold. So we have to be patient even when we're working on projects and working with our clients. There are many decision points and many meetings, lots of meetings for approvals, and these take time, right? And then we have to get the spaces built and finished out, and that also takes a long time. I think during COVID, a lot of us learned patience, right? And so sometimes it takes adversity for us to learn about patience as well. I do want to distinguish too that patience might be needed in other areas of your career, even to make you a better designer. So, you know, maybe you've been working for 2 years, you believe you're ready for that next challenge, and maybe you want to be a senior designer. You might feel really impatient and ready for that next step. But the reality is it takes many years and lots of project and client experience to become a design leader. So my advice here again is to practice your craft. As we discussed, work hard on those projects and also practice patience. That's something that I had to really, again, practice very much in my career. Your time will come. And I can tell you now, I eventually made it out of the resource library after 21 years. So one last thought about patience is that, again, it's a good life skill to have. On a personal level, when I was 45 years old, this is 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And really nothing prepares you for that because especially I was living my very busy life and career and I had just moved to New York for that textile job. But I had learned about patience during my cancer journey because that too is a long process to go from discovery to your diagnosis to having many surgeries to treatment and then beyond. I was actually in treatment for 5 years and I had to truly embrace patience just to carry on every single day. So patience is a virtue. So how do you move forward when you're struggling and experiencing pain? And by pain here, I mean, you know, they could be daily struggles, conflicts, frustrations, or really anything bringing you down. Could be things at work, things in your personal life. I had a lot of painful moments in my career long before I was diagnosed with cancer. As a woman, I've been treated with both sexism and disrespect at work, as I'm sure many interior designers have. As someone who practices design without an interior design degree, I've experienced some conflict with coworkers. And then, of course, there's the age-old conflicts between architects and interior designers. And if you haven't experienced that, prepare yourself because you will. As someone who has had a life-threatening illness, I've had a lot of challenges working, staying positive, showing up at work every day with a smile. There will always be a struggle in your life with something, and this is really to be expected. What's important is how you deal with it and to have a positive attitude to keep moving forward. We only grow and get better when we can overcome adversity. And then you also become more resilient. And that is the thing I think that's helped me the most. Because next time you encounter struggles, they won't be as debilitating to you. So now anybody can come at me. I'm not asking you to come at me, but I have learned how to deal with conflicts a lot better because I have learned how to face conflict, you know, and face adversity and also have patience. And it's been tremendously helpful in my career, especially working for a really large corporation. So for me, I mentioned the word Avanti in the beginning. That is my mantra. I have several mantras, but that's where the Avanti comes in. I had it actually tattooed on the back of my leg. So that was my leg that you saw on the first page there. And I put it on the back of my leg because I literally must move forward. It's a reminder to take that first step with my right foot forward. And I also got 2 more tattoos. You can see them on my wrist there in the middle. The first one is brave, and that's a reminder to always be brave no matter what I'm dealing with. And this has been really helpful, having this reminder right, you know, here on my wrist. All I have to do is look down and there it is with me wherever I go. So whether I'm having a mammogram or again, playing guitar in front of a crowd or presenting design concepts at meeting, all of these things are nerve-wracking, right? So I just need to look down at my reminder. Valor, which is tattooed on my other wrist, means to have courage in the face of danger. That's a really good mantra to have. I am not suggesting that you all go get mantras tattooed on you, but I am suggesting that you find words that will inspire you to help you move forward every single day, no matter what life and work throw at you. Because pain and conflict will appear at times, and it's really how you handle them that will make all difference. So your career and your personal life as well needs to have purpose. Why are you learning about design? I ask people this all the time, like when they're frustrated at work. I'm like, well, why did you go to design school in the first place? Like, what draws you to this industry? While many people think interior design is very glamorous, and it can be, there are also some really challenging parts, right? Like, I've had beautiful projects get value engineered, and the contractor switch things out without your knowledge, or the client actually throws your entire finished palette in the trash. That's actually happened to me. I actually got flown to England to get yelled at for 6 hours and then flown home after being sent out the servant's entrance at a client's house. So I've experienced some pretty low lows in my career that have really demoralized me. The other thing that's not glamorous, and this will happen to all of us, you'll be doing some like filing cabinet count to be reused on a project, and you'll be collecting dust bunnies all over your clothes when you get home, and you'll be wondering, why did I join this industry, right? So I think we have to take a step back and think about what is the larger purpose of interior design. With everything that we do as designers, again, we need to find a purpose to show up at work and, again, work hard, right? And have that work ethic. So it took me, I think, a long time to really understand what my purpose is, but I think I finally figured it out. And that is to both care about the purpose of, or not the purpose of design, but the promise of design, but also share it. So this is something I want you guys to think about. And at ASID National, we talk about this a lot. I was involved with the Outcome of Design program, and we talk about this idea of design being really powerful because it shapes not just buildings or objects, but really how people behave. It affects communities and entire systems. And I truly believe that design can have a positive impact on people's lives, and that design is an agent of change for the greater good. And I live that every single day. So this is, again, very much aligned with what ASID believes as an organization. And I hope that you will reflect on what your purpose is and why you are a designer. One last bit about purpose, and this goes back to just my personal interest. To me, art and design is really an expression of our humanity, and it's evidence of our culture. I see it as a visual language to influence and inspire us, but we need to know how to interpret it. And this has also become my quest that makes me really excited every single day. So the last point I'll make about moving forward in your career is to embrace your power. I'm using the word power here in a very soft way, not in a destructive way. When you embrace your power, you will have accomplished many of the things that we've discussed here, and you'll gain some confidence to move ahead in your career. So it's about giving yourself affirmation that you deserve to be in this industry, that you've contributed to your industry, and also hopefully to your community, and that you will continue to thrive despite any challenges that emerge. So be prepared to do the work with a smile, engage with the teams around you. If your heart and mind are open, you will find your power. And be sure, this is the thing about power, because you can use it for good or bad. So you want to be sure to use your power for good. We can all inspire our colleagues and our community through our design work. Soft power is all about give and take. So find a mentor, but also be a mentor. Our design community, I think, is your most powerful tool as a designer. We really are an amazing community, and I certainly would not be who I am without this community. Also think about your own legacy. What will you leave behind after you're gone? Having had cancer, I actually think about this a lot. A good way to approach this is to make a list of your major interests in the industry, and then be sure you're nourishing these interests over the years. So for me, that is sustainability, equity, social justice. These are the things that I want to focus my energy on. And of course, I want to continue the connections between culture and design. So be sure to spend some time immersing yourself in these interests and applying them to your everyday design work. This is a great way to gain both expertise and experience, but also fostering that focus that I talked about earlier to really direct your energy as you move forward. And lastly, don't be afraid to lean into your outsider skills and bring them to work. This is what will make you unique and set you apart from your colleagues. And you just might be what's needed for that project, that client, or that firm to succeed. And I'm very lucky that, again, as an outsider, I worked at 3 large, nationally known design firms that saw that in me and fostered that. So ask yourself, what can I bring to this team, this project, et cetera, that is different? So I love this poster. I actually have a similar poster, a different color, but it was designed by Anthony Burrell, who's a British graphic designer. So I just love this. Work hard and be nice to people. So, okay, everybody, what have we learned so far? I'm going to summarize for you. So we learned we have to work hard and be nice to people. We've learned an Italian word, avanti. We learned that when opportunity knocks, you should answer the door. We also learned that all paths are not straight. It's okay to have a fluid path in your career. We also learned that practice is crucial to getting good at anything. We now know that patience too is important in work and life to grow and achieve what you want. We learned that pain and challenges do not define you. You can move forward with more resilience and experience facing adversity. And we learned that it's important to have mentors and then become one. And lastly, I'm going to say it again, be nice to sales reps. They can really help your career. So thanks for joining me tonight. I hope I've inspired you just a little bit to move forward while making a positive impact on the world. If you want to connect, please follow Mohawk Group. I have our Instagram on there and our LinkedIn. And then the other Instagrams, Madame Duchamp is my personal one. I also have an Instagram and a website called Descent by Design, where I write about the intersection of design and social movements. Repeat, no repeat is just product highlights that I like to feature. And then, as Jeffrey mentioned, I volunteer and I'm on the board at the Philadelphia Museum of Art for Collab, which basically supports the design collection at the museum. So please follow us, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to stay in touch. Julie and I met at an ASID conference and stayed in touch. I wish everybody best of luck in your careers. And I really want to thank ASID New Jersey for having me speak tonight. I think we're going to do a Q&A now.
Yes, thank you so much, Royce. Wow. I mean, if we had the goal to educate and empower, then I can just go check, because we met that goal by having you as our keynote tonight. That was really hit on everything about educate and empower. I feel so empowered right now. MJ, I actually noticed that there are some really good questions in the chat box from DNL, Sarah, Elizabeth, Uni, and Ashley B.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, let's just start with those. If you'll field those to Royce, that'd be great, because they've all put, those five have put really great questions there to get her going.
Sure. So the first question is, do you often find yourself in a position where you're overwhelmed by a project?
Oh, all the time.
And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the project and the team that I'm working with. I mean, there are times where I feel really powerless and I just have to rely on the judgment of other people who are making decisions and just be a good team player. And that's part, again, of being a team player and working, in this industry. As I mentioned, design is a team sport, unless you're someone like Michael Graves. And even then, Michael had a huge team of people behind him, but he was directing. But our industry, those kinds of roles are few and far between. It's typically a very much team effort. So, as far as just feeling like, frustrated and whatnot, there's lots of things that you can do. You just step out of the project for a little bit, take a break. Like I have a dog, we go for a walk, and that's kind of how I relax. I live in the city, so everyone's telling me to go into nature, but that's hard for me to do. So I just take my dog for a walk and you just lower your heart rate and just breathe a little bit, and then you come back to the project with fresh eyes. But again, our industry is it's challenging. It's budget oriented, it's time oriented. There's a lot of fast deadlines, and we're expected to produce very beautiful, amazing solutions in a very short amount of time. And that's not easy, and it's not for everyone, so you have to kind of get used to that lifestyle. But there are ways to manage your stress and to manage when things don't go your way, for sure.
Great.
Great. Do you want me to do a second one, Jeffrey?
Yeah, go ahead. Just do all of those. I think they're
Okay.
so good. They're really good.
The second question is, how did you balance work and treatment?
When you were going through
I did not do a good job of that. I was living in New York City, and it was really hard. Like I had to take the subway every day to the cancer center for radiation. Just personally, I was in a bad place in every aspect of my life. But I will say, like, I had to rely on myself. And, my mom's on the call here. My mom, she didn't live near me. She lives down south. So we would text every day. So just, for me, it was just finding my own power again to like stand up and move forward every single day. And I literally took life one step at a time, because like it was so uncertain what was going to happen. You know, sometimes you really just have to like pause. And for me, that was like work was not as important, you know, even though obviously it is, but you know, saving my life was the most important thing at that moment. So I think a lot of it too is just prioritizing. I still worked. I think I only missed 2 days of work, minus 2 weeks that I took off for, I had 3 surgeries. So I took 2 weeks off and I used my vacation for that. I only missed 2 days beyond that. So, you know, I did work all through treatment and it was hard, but I just prioritized, you know, like to me, like treatment was a project like anything else. And if you know, like people who know me, everything is a project. Like everything, like cleaning my house is a project.
The next question is, who is your biggest inspiration when it comes to design?
Oh gosh, I have so many like people that I admire for design. I'm not sure I can name one person, and actually most of the people that really inspire me are artists. They're not really designers. You know, Keith Haring is one of my favorite artists. I was in high school when he was active. And, you know, there's something about, you know, he created his own visual language with the work that he was doing. And that really spoke to me. David Bowie is another like tremendous influence. And, you know, a lot of people only think of David Bowie as a musician, but he was really an incredible visual artist. I mean, he also talk about practice, like he really micromanaged everything about his career, all his visuals and costumes and sets and music videos and whatnot. So he really, you know, again, project managed his whole career and had his own visual language as well as a musical language. And that also was very, I think, influential for me.
Great. The next question is, has there ever been a time or a moment when you have asked yourself if this is the path you want, and if so, what clicked that this is where you belong, or if that's happened?
Yeah, I think when I first started working at Hillier, I wasn't sure like this was going to be my long-term career, but then I wound up being there for 10 years. And then I think, okay, now I've dedicated 10 plus the 3 years of my career, it's like 13 years of my life to design. So this is now the path I'm on, you know. It just kind of happens. Like, I'm not sure I chose design, but I did choose to work hard so that I can learn a new skill set. So, you know, I had envisioned this life of art history and I thought I was going to work in a museum and be a professor and all this stuff. And that didn't happen. And I had to pivot, but, you know, it wasn't all laid out for me perfectly. I had to really work hard for it. So I'm not sure it really clicked until, you know, probably till I got to Kling and I was a senior designer and being billed out as a senior designer when I realized like, wow, like, you know, I think I'm doing it now finally.
Mm-hmm. So also for what you're doing now, do you come across entry-level designers often?
Yeah, for sure. So at Mohawk, I'm a design director and part of my job is to present to the A&D community. And I go to firms all the time and present our products. I present trend lectures and all kinds of things. And there are designers at every level in the firms. There's interns, there's junior designers, you know, everybody all the way up to principals. So I work with and communicate with pretty much, you know, everybody at every level in design firms. And then even at Mohawk, we have, you know, interns and junior designers and things like that.
Do you
So, yeah.
do you notice like over the years if there's any kind of trends that entry-level designers are bringing to the industry?
That is a great question. Well, you know, things have changed. Like when I first started in design, I mentioned we didn't have AutoCAD, like, you know, there was no internet. And so now when, you know, younger designers come into firms, they have all these skill sets that us older designers do not have. And that's refreshing. Like, you know, so, you know, I mentioned mentoring earlier, like I like to mentor, but I also like when younger designers can mentor me and I can learn from them. You know, they have a whole different way of learning and working and thinking. It's different. I'm a Gen Xer and, you know, millennials have their own way of working. And then now we have Gen Z, your generation coming into the workforce and we all think and behave very differently. So it's really nice to learn from each other.
I'm going to read this one verbatim. So, as a student, I often get a constant feeling of intimidation by other creatives in this industry. Have you felt intimidated?
Oh, every day, all the time. I mean, I have imposter syndrome. Again, I didn't go to design school. I studied art history, and I still come across people who are like, why am I dealing with you? You know, you're not a designer. And I'm like, well, let's talk about what a designer is. You know, like I try to kind of break stereotypes, but yes, I feel intimidated all the time. And I'm meeting at my level, I meet a lot with design principals and even famous designers, and it can be quite scary actually. But I have to remember, again, like I worked hard to get here. This is intentional. My path led me here, and I deserve to be here. And that's another mantra that you can say to yourself at any level, you know. And I think someday I'll get over my imposter syndrome. I think a lot of people have imposter syndrome, you know.
Yes.
It's quite common.
The next one is, what advice do you have for students who feel burnt out from the large projects they have? Is this something that happens often in the industry, or are roles split up?
It really depends on where you go after you graduate. I mean, I know school can be really grueling with charrettes and deadlines just for projects and things. And you will have that in the interior design industry, but it is more realistic. Like you won't be up all night, you know, like you are in studio, for example. And again, it depends on the firm you work at. When I worked at Michael Grace, everyone went home for dinner and came back to the studio at night. That is not a common practice for architecture firms. You know, when I worked at Hillier, the office literally cleared out at like 4:58. So it really just depends on where you're working and what the culture is at the firm. And you can find a firm that, you know, meets your lifestyle. And I will tell you, it's really, really nice now having remote work from home because, you know, I know for if you're young and you want to be in a firm, that's probably more harmful for you because you need to be in a firm, again, watching designers and hearing the you know jargon and the language and being part of a team physically. But working from home, especially for someone like me at my career, like it's really amazing. I don't have to deal with all the culture in the office. And I mean, my colleagues are all in Georgia, and I know if I was down there, I probably would be, you know, a little frustrated because I would be the outsider from the Northeast who talks too fast. And you know, I still have some of that with them. But working remotely too, I think has its benefits, and you know, you can kind of choose now what kind of firm you want to work at and set some of those boundaries for yourself. Where my generation didn't have a choice. You got to be at your desk all the time. If you went to the bathroom, you had to make it quick, right? Like you got to be at your desk, or you're going to be in trouble. That's not the case anymore.
Okay.
I don't know if
what
I
would-
answered your burnout question though.
I think you did.
Okay.
What would you
Yeah.
say has been the biggest challenge when working with large groups of other designers or firms?
Definitely people's egos can get in the way. I mean, I have met lots of designers that, I mean, I love them, but you know, sometimes they're like, you know, they even say to me, like, what do you know about this? Like, this is my expertise, you know, and sometimes I have to remind people that like, I actually have some expertise in this topic that we happen to be talking about. So sometimes it's just like, you know, getting a seat at the table is sometimes hard. You know, I'm 50, I don't even know how old I am, 54. But I look young, and so that works against me a lot of the time. You know, I'll be in a meeting and people think I don't have experience because I look young, and I have to remind people, no, I've been in the industry for 30 years. And so sometimes just like making space for yourself at the table and speaking up when people are having these, you know, very intense conversations and they think they're always right. You know, I had a meeting today actually where, you know, it was mostly all men, and they were talking over me and nobody would let me finish, and it was very frustrating. So, you know, these are the challenges that happen, and they happen to everybody on some kind of level. And you just have to, again, remind yourself, like, I earned a spot here, I belong here, I have experience, and, you know, my voice is just as valuable as everybody else's. And, you know, you can bring your experience to the table. You just have to let people know, you have to speak up and make that space for yourself. I will say no one's going to give it to you. You have to really figure out how to get in with a team, you know. But I will say once a team sees what you're capable of, people will then respect you and make space for you as well.
And MJ, there's one more question from Tony from the chat box, and then we'll turn to a couple of questions to ask and then live.
Right. So the question from Tony is, what advice do you have for someone coming from another industry trying to break into the interior design world?
Well, that's kind of what I did. You know, I started with a clean slate. So I think it's really, again, figuring out like, why are you attracted to the interior design or architecture industry, and trying to figure out what you want to learn. There's so much to learn. So just pick something and stick with it, and just spend all your time like learning about it, reading about it, talking to people, again, finding your place. But it takes effort. Like I mentioned, I really had to work harder than everybody else because, I didn't know all the different paths that were available, and I really had to experience these things for myself. But I think being curious and asking a lot of questions, you could shadow people at firms. I think that's really helpful. Networking is, again, I talked about how amazing our A&D industry is. Like, we are such good networkers. Like Julie came right up to me and she's like, I heard about you from Joey Shimoda. And then, we just started talking, and like Julia was networking. And then I found out she was a student. I'm like, wow, she's got it. She's got it already. So networking is like half the battle. You get to meet all these cool people and they share what they do, and everybody's working on cool and interesting things. And then eventually you can start connecting the dots, but you just got to put yourself out there.
So that leads perfectly into, I really hung on to the moments. I have 3 major points I'd love to follow up on with you from things you said, but one that I held on to that I feel like hearing from you more on this subject would make such a big difference for design educators today, and particularly design program directors. You talked about immersing yourself in interior design when you were at Hillier. When you made that jump from Michael Graves to Hillier, you said, I immersed myself in interior design. Could you speak to the importance of that and what that really means?
Center. You may be eligible to eliminate or reduce your student loan balance.
Christina, thank you. Could you speak to that? Because I think that's such an important point. Just that.
Sorry, ask the question one more time quickly.
I know we both got ADD. As soon as I heard the distraction, I'm like, done. Okay, regroup. You talked about immersing.
How did I immerse myself at Hillier?
And what does that really mean? What would you say to this generation that frankly has way more distractions than our generation, because you and I are the same generation, ever had?
Yeah.
And what does that mean to immerse yourself, and how can they do it?
So first I want to say it's a choice. It's a choice how much you want to work, how much you want to learn, how much you want to invest in yourself and your career. It's a choice. Like, I could have gone home at 5 o'clock every day. I actually did not, and I made a choice to focus on my career. I don't know if that was the right choice or not. Like, I never had kids, for example, because I was always so busy working, but it was a choice. I made a choice to be a designer, and I had to do everything that I could to learn about our industry. And so that meant staying late and like just looking at all the fabrics in the library and learning all the manufacturers that are out there, and making sure like I'm learning who every single sales rep is, and making appointments for them to all come in and see me. Most designers don't do that, and they don't care about that. Actually, they don't have time for sales reps. And so I decided to just embrace my role like 100%. And then, I mentioned when I was at Michael Graves, I was like, okay, architecture is my new industry. I'm going to go learn about this. So I went to all the lectures at the university. It was amazing. I got to see Rem Koolhaas speak, and Peter Eisenman, and all these people from the 90s who were super famous. I didn't know who they were at the time, but I do now. And I learned a lot just by, again, dedicating my free time to learning about the industry. And so this could be everything from going to museums and galleries. I do that a lot. That's a big part of my life. And if I can see an exhibit, a design exhibit, even better, and learning about how does this person fit in, to this part of history. So things like learning about Bauhaus, or, just really anything. It's just being curious, I think, and reading. I read a lot, getting design magazines and really, absorbing them. It's hard to imagine now, I know you guys, because you have the internet, but like when we didn't have the internet, we relied on magazines pretty much extensively.
Bill.
And my mom will tell you, I used to beg to go to New York, to go to like 1 or 2, magazine stores that had like British design magazines and British music magazines. It was like a pilgrimage just to go find magazines, that we couldn't get in central New Jersey. So
I'm beaming right now. My students who are on this call, I'm beaming right now. Remember everything she just said in the last 34 seconds. That actually leads right into the other thing I picked up that you talked about that I think is such an important lesson for students and emerging professionals. You talked about when you went to work at Michael Graves. I wrote it down that I said she talked about the steps that you took in the firm as where you started, and then it was a journey really within that firm. And how important would you say going through, and I'm wondering did you raise your hand when you would learn that there was a new opportunity that maybe you could step into?
No.
You
I
just
was
were there for the
shy back. I mean, maybe shy is not the right word, but I just didn't know my place at the firm. And I will say working at Michael Graves was extremely hierarchical, like many classic architecture firms were in the day. Some are still hierarchical. But what I mean by that is like, the power comes from the top down. And I was like the low man on the totem pole. So I literally had jobs like picking up the dog. We had 3 dogs in the office. Like, guess who got paged every time a dog had an accident in the studio? That would be me. But I had a good attitude about it. And I grew up with dogs, so that didn't bother me. When you are I knew I was in a place that was very life-changing. I just had to kind of go with the flow. And then eventually, because I was that person that was so happy to do everything, like picking up pizza for Michael's class, because he was a professor at the university, or even doing dishes at his house. I used to house sit all the time for him and help with parties and whatever. Doing those menial, stupid things that we all hate to do put me in good graces of him and the principals. And I did that at Hilliard too. I mean, it was a different way, but maybe a principal needed to find and source tile for his bathroom at home. Like, I would do that. I didn't get paid for it. It was done on my own free time. But those kinds of gestures and just being willing to be helpful and be present and be a team player make a huge difference. If you have an attitude like, I'm not staying 2 minutes late and I'm out of here, no principal is going to invest in you and want to help you along in your career. But if you're somebody who's just willing to roll up your sleeves no matter what, and I was that kind of person, people invested in me. They saw, eventually I was given opportunities to, color drawings. Like, people could see, oh, I actually have some art skills, which I did. I was always creating art my whole life. So when they learned that, they're like, oh, Royce can help us make models. Oh, Royce can help us color these drawings. So that's how I got exposed to things. I never really asked for that. I mean, I would never be like, oh, I could make a model. Like, I don't know how to do that. But sure, I can get a tweezer and fluff a piece of foam. Sure, anybody can do that, right? But it's really about trust and showing that you're willing to be part of a team. That's really, I think, the message there.
So as a design director for the largest carpet and flooring company in the world, can you just talk briefly about what are a few of the key roles that you play and the tasks that you accomplish in that position as a design director?
Yeah, well, we have actually quite a large design team. I mentioned they're all down in Georgia. And I am not the only design director. We actually have several. So the other design directors, each of them is in charge of a segment. So what I mean by that is like hospitality or healthcare or workplace education, kind of institutional projects. And they oversee the specific product designs for those segments. My job is a little bit different. And I was actually the first, I was on board before the other design directors came along. So my job was, and still is, to create the overall vision for what we are designing towards, like a theme or a story. Like, what does Mohawk want to say to the world? That's my job, to come up with that. And the design directors, once again, this is where, we're a team. It's my work, but I put it forth and we all hash it out and everyone contributes. And then we decide, yes, this is the theme. So then the design directors go back and they have their own teams of designers that work for them, and they all come back and create products. We probably launch, I don't know, close to 100 products a year. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. We launch for major trade shows like NeoCon every year is in June. We have major launches, usually like 6 products or something just for NeoCon. So we're always working towards this bigger story, and everything has to connect. We don't just like randomly make things. That's really irresponsible to just randomly make things. They have to have meaning. They have to support our investments at the mill. Like we have certain machines that do certain things, and we have to use the yarns that we have in our color bank. We can't like stray from that, because that's what manufacturing is about. It's about efficiencies and using what you have. That's not to say if our team wants to make something new that we can't invest in something, but we would have to get permission, because usually those machines are like $6 million, right? But typically our team is, working under the parameters of like what the mill is set up as, and then what our overall or overarching theme is.
Got it. That's so fascinating. So I wanted to now take some live questions from the audience, turn it over to the audience for some live. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Thank you, Julia.
I also just want to say thank you again for taking the time to come and speak to us about your experience and where it all started. And Royce is just as nice in person as she is virtual. I went up to her at Gather, like she had mentioned, and I was by myself. Like I was so nervous. I didn't know anyone, and she was so nice to me. And I could tell that she really does care about students and our future, since, we're going to be the next generation of interior designers working in the field. And she was just so kind. And I feel like my experience with the interior design professionals and industry partners, they just want the best for us. So, as Royce said, like, don't be afraid to ask them questions and always be nice to them too, for any reps. But my question is, do you think that sustainability has upward mobility in the future, since you had said that that's a really big concern of yours and a really big focus for you?
Yes, definitely sustainability. I think your generation, like Gen Z, cares the most about sustainability, and it's embedded in everything you guys do, whether it's like brands you are attracted to and things that you purchase. My generation is a little different. Like sustainability did not exist as a concept, we're a known quantity when we were growing up. And I didn't even learn about sustainability in our industry probably until the later 90s. So it's hard because different generations, again, behave differently. I just saw a fascinating report. We get a lot of like cool trend reports, and there's a company out there called Think Lab. They're owned by Sandow. This is a bigger company that owns Interior Design Magazine and Metropolis Magazine. But Think Lab is all about data. They collect data and report back to our interior design industry. And one of the things that they have figured out is that there are different personas of designers. So there's 5 of them. One is called the rep first. So someone like my generation, we're a rep first persona. That means that the rep is the first person we go to learn about a product. We call them, we want to see them face to face. Sustainability actually was quite low in the personas. Only 5% of designers today put sustainability first. And I was really shocked when I saw that data, because like rep first was like 39% or something like that. The other ones are brand first, data first. Data first is really low. This would be like for healthcare or people who are practicing like evidence-based design. I'm trying to remember the other one now. But sustainability was quite low, and I was really surprised. But I do think that's going to flip as older people retire and get out of this profession, and Gen Z is rising. You guys you care more about sustainability than you do care about meeting reps first. That's just the persona of how you practice. That doesn't mean you don't care about sustainability. I obviously care about sustainability, even though I still prefer to see a rep first. So a lot of it is just making choices about how you navigate in the industry and how much you embrace in your work. A lot of design firms focus very, very heavily on sustainability first. Like Perkins and Will is very famous for that. Gensler is famous for that. There's a lot of firms, and honestly, it's going to become so embedded in our industry that you guys probably won't even think about it. It's just going to be something you do, where our generation had to really like pave the way.
Okay, another live question from anyone?
I would like to go.
Go ahead, Priyoti.
Hi, Royce. So
Hi,
nice to
Priyoti.
meet you.
Steve?
Hi, I'm an international student. Really nice to meet you. Really inspiring. So my question is, someone of your experience, caliber, or stature, according to you, what's the difference between a good designer and a great designer?
Oh, that's a good question. And that's really hard to answer, right? I'm going to go back to what I was saying earlier, though. I think great design is about design that changes the world for the better and impacts lives. And if you're just, anybody can be a good designer and make a beautiful space. But if you're not thinking about sustainability and more importantly, thinking about end users and community and really how can we make spaces that are welcoming and really serving people in the best possible way, that I'm going to go with that.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you, Priyoti.
Thank you.
Another live question from anyone? I want to ask you about something you talked about, equity and social justice. I feel like the first sentence I'm going to say, we live in what feels like extraordinarily uncertain times. So I feel like that's something I've been saying now for, definitely 8 years. But I feel like for many, it's even more extraordinarily uncertain. I just sat through a talk the other day about issues surrounding a post-Roe world. And I was thinking, how do you see the power of design as something that can make people feel more comfortable in the world that they're inhabiting? How do you see design as something that's comforting in these really uncertain, challenging, scary times?
This is a great question, and it really taps into all the work I'm doing right now. So first of all, I'm working on my forecast for 2024, and I'm going to call it Culture of Care. And it's all about how can we care for ourselves? How can we care for each other? So people, place, which is community, and planet, which covers our sustainability. There's been so much reaction to what's been going on in the world and, with mental health issues and challenges, wellness, on and on. The other thing that I think about, and I do have actually a whole lecture on this. I've given it at Design Philadelphia, and I've given it at, I just gave it to all of HOK's interiors a few weeks ago, and some other firms. My Dissent by Design website and Instagram, I really look at issues of equity and how design can solve for that. So I have a whole talk based on a manifesto that I wrote. So you guys are going to think I'm a little nuts, but last year I was teaching at Drexel, working full-time at Mohawk, and I also went back to school at Parsons to get a certificate in equity. Everybody has a different acronym. I like to call it JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, but they were calling it, equity, inclusion.
They're EISJ.
Yeah, everybody has a different acronym, but I took that program at Parsons last year, and it was life-changing for me because it really helped me frame how to talk about these issues in our profession of design. And so as part of my class, I had to write a manifesto, and I turned that into this lecture. And the concept is all about how can we create equitable spaces in the built environment that are just and that do no harm, that are not barriers to people. So if you want to hear it, we can set something up at a later date.
I know. I just realized it's EDISJ.
Yeah, everybody has a different acronym.
Okay, that's fascinating. And Nada, as our president, please remember that Royce has another topic ready to go.
Oh, I have so many topics.
Yeah.
I'm listening. I'll
right,
connect with you, Rejoice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I will surely connect.
do we have any other live questions to ask from
Can I ask a
anyone?
question?
Yes, please.
Hi, Royce. I'm Juliana. I'm also from Mercer County, and I wanted to know if you could repeat how you started working at Micrograves.
My mom found an ad in the Princeton Town Topics newspaper. And the ad was for an administrative assistant. And I'm pretty sure my parents were ready to kick me out of the house. I was 23 years old. I had worked in an art gallery. I didn't even mention this for a year after I dropped out of grad school, making no money. I mean, who's buying art during recession? Nobody. Literally made no money. And my parents just needed to give me a little nudge, which was awesome, because then I moved out of the house. I got my job at Michael Graves, all because I was goth and had really good taste in music.
Was it the 1980s, late 80s?
I graduated college in 91. So this was 92 when I started.
92.
So yeah,
Okay.
exactly 30, well, now 31 years. Wow. I didn't even think about that.
Wow. All right. If no one else has any questions, yes. Oh, Tyrone, go ahead.
Yeah. I know you had good afternoon, good night. It's afternoon and night. I know you had spoke about a student had asked the question again about being burnt out as a student. How do you the advice? I would can you speak a little more in depth on how do we, as a burnout student, how do we make a comeback?
Yeah.
What advice do you have?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to take care of yourself. Your work, you have to really prioritize your work and have it be, very project based, and do it like, again, just like I was talking about, like one day at a time, one step at a time. Work is the same way. You just tackle a little chunk at a time, and maybe set some boundaries for yourself and be like, okay, I say this word all the time, or this phrase all the time, pencils down. Like I know for myself, just with my own health and my body, like when I feel a certain way, I'm like, that's it. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. Pencils down. I got to go stop what I'm doing and lie down or drink water or whatever it is. So I think you need to just set some very healthy boundaries for yourself. Like I was saying earlier, take a walk, but build in some healthy routine. Like it's perfectly fine to go, do something else for a half hour and, and come back to it in the morning. Even when I was younger, I used to just set my alarm for early in the morning just to get up for an extra hour. You'd be amazed like how much you can get done between like 6 and 7 a.m. when you don't have all the distractions of the world. So, it's just really time management and making sure you're taking care of yourself. I know burnout is real. Designers working in the industry get that too when we're in a deadline driven industry. So you just have to really learn how to pace yourself and just, again, take things one step at a time. You will get to the end of this deadline. You will get to the end of the project. It will be amazing. You just have to pace yourself.
Thank you so much, Royce. That actually was a theme that came. Yes, and Tyrone, thank you for that wonderful question. Actually, perfect question to end on. That was a theme that was shared last night in our program on preparing for the NCIDQ and becoming a certified interior designer. Alice Brousseau-Coutard, who you may know, who works in the Morristown, New Jersey of Gensler, talked about how when she was working full-time as a designer at Gensler and preparing for the NCIDQ, self-care became very, very, very important for her in balancing the pressure of preparing for something, but also the responsibilities that you have to achieve in order to keep your job, but carving out self-care time. I love ending on the topic of self-care because it is intrinsically linked to the power of design and design thinking as well. I just want to remind everyone that we have another day tomorrow, and it is an in-person day at Berkeley College. I'm actually sitting in the event room right now with the ASID logo. I was testing it out to make sure the projector would stay on for hours, since we need it to stay on for hours tomorrow, and it is. Tomorrow morning from 10 to 12, we have our industry partner spotlight. We will have Benjamin Moore, Sherwin-Williams, and Samuelson Fine Furniture here making presentations. And then we have a wonderful catered free lunch by a fantastic caterer after that. And then a program on I've graduated, now what? From 1 to 2 p.m. And then designer philosophies and processes will finish us off for ASID New Jersey Student and Emerging Professionals Week. And I actually just see that both Diane DeRocher and Marina Umali, who are both on the ASID New Jersey board, were on the call tonight. So I can't wait to see how you two might incorporate some of Royce's points maybe into what you talk about tomorrow in your designer philosophies talk. I also just want to recognize the committee members who are here that have worked so hard putting this together. MJ Davino, is on the committee. Joya Giovanelli, our student rep to the board, is on the committee. Mariam Abdel Hamid is on the committee. Nadine El Telkawi, Carrie Newman. And we have board members that we work with that are also here tonight. As I said, our board president, Nadal Zubi, our president-elect, Marina Umali, Tammy Bolden, who's the professional development director, who is here tonight, and Diane DeRocher, who will be presenting tomorrow. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Oh, our wonderful administrator, Christina, who makes the Zoom stuff happen and will make so many things happen all the time, and that we can't do it without that. So I am going to say, Nada, unless you have any other words that you want to say, or anyone else has anything they want to add to finish off the night, please know that if you have not registered yet for tomorrow and you want to come, please be here at Berkeley College in Woodland Park, New Jersey. You can come for as much or as little of the day as your schedule allows, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow. We would love to see you. If it's only for an hour, we'd love to see you if it's for the whole day. So we look forward to that. Royce, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was
You're
really,
welcome, and thanks for having me. I want to mention I'm going to Gather again this year. It's going to be in Los Angeles in August. So if anybody's going, feel free to tackle me in the hallway.
what is that, around mid-August, isn't it? Isn't it around like August
I don't have the
15th?
exact date. I can look.
I think it is around August 15th.
It's around August 15th.
13th through 15th. Hi, it's Marina. Thank you so much,
Yes.
everyone, for doing this. It was fantastic. Thank you. And I look forward to meeting you. It's at August 13th through the 15th.
So Royce, just so you know, Marina Umali, who was just speaking, is our president-elect for ASID New Jersey, and she's presenting tomorrow on designer philosophy. So I look forward to hearing her presentation tomorrow.
Yes,
All right,
looking forward to seeing everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks so much. It was
Thanks,
a wonderful
everybody.
evening.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Roy.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Roy. Thank you,
Good
Jeff.
night.
Everybody.
Good night.